The skinny back of Bruce Lee slammed against the corrugated dark blue steel sheet of container number C2747 on the eastern pier of the Rotterdam commercial port in the Netherlands, with such force that a ringing, resonating sound echoed throughout the entire industrial complex of port warehouses. For exactly 4 absolute seconds on the foggy and cold Thursday morning of November 23rd, 1972. 30 Dutch dockworkers, who had been unloading goods from the newly docked cargo ship Stella Maris arriving from Hong Kong, simultaneously forgot how to breathe. Against the backdrop of the eastern pier, the hum of industrial hydraulic cranes continued to sound. In the damp air of the commercial port, the characteristic pungent smell of salt water mixed with marine diesel lingered. But not a single one of the 30 workers present on that foggy November morning could move a single muscle in the following 4 seconds, because they had just seen Henrik Vanderberg, 2 meters 3 centimeters tall, 172 kg of raw muscle mass built over 17 years of continuous amateur professional powerlifting training, the reigning 3-time strongman champion of the Netherlands in 1970, 1971. And 1972, calmly walked the 12 meters separating the administrative loading zone from the manual unloading zone of the eastern pier. He stopped behind the skinny little Chinese worker hired just that morning, who was helping unload bales of textiles from the east, grabbed Bruce by his simple blue-gray jacket made of thick rustic work cloth, lifted him completely off the wet concrete floor of the pier, and forcefully pinned him against the corrugated steel sheet of the dark blue giant industrial container number RC247. Right behind him, Henrik smiled broadly under the yellow light of the port's industrial halogen lamps and said loudly in rough rural Dutch, which Bruce mentally translated later through universal physical signals: Chinese don't work in the port of Rotterdam without permission from the 3-time champion. It was November 23rd, 1972. There were exactly 30 paralyzed dockworkers. And in the following 4 seconds, the 3-time strongman champion of the Netherlands was about to find out. Lying on his back on the wet concrete of the eastern industrial pier of the port of Rotterdam, that there are dark blue steel shipping containers in this world that silently choose who gets to stay standing at the end of a fight. The man pinning Bruce to the container was named Henrik Vanderberg. He was 36 years old. He hailed from Utrecht, a central industrial city in the Netherlands, and was a direct descendant of 3 generations of dock workers and stevedores on both sides of his family. He began working as a loader on the Dutch port docks at age 14 in 1950, during the turbulent period of post-war European reconstruction. At 19, he discovered amateur professional powerlifting through Belgian fellow workers crossing the border daily. Over 17 years of continuous training, he transformed his naturally heavy rural body of 196 cm and 110 kg into a grotesque muscular figure standing 2 3 cm tall and weighing 172 kg, officially recorded at national competitions at age 28. In 1964, he won his first amateur national strongman championship in the heavyweight division. In 1970, he won his first official title as a 3-time champion in a specific competitive discipline, and defended it in 1971 and 1972 without losing a single official competition for 3 full seasons. By November 1972, he was considered the strongest officially documented man in all of mainland Holland. Throughout the Dutch port circles, he was known by the nickname his peer colleagues gave him at age 32, Reus, giant in Dutch. He earned the nickname when he single-handedly lifted a fully assembled 4-ton marine diesel engine from the cargo ship Wilhelmina onto the central port pier during an emergency operation, without any auxiliary hydraulic equipment. He had been working as the unofficial dock foreman of the Port of Rotterdam for 9 consecutive years and continued intense training in specialized strongman gyms in Utrecht. Bruce Lee was 32 years old. He had been in the Netherlands for only 3 days. It was an important European stop in the preliminary promo tour schedule for the film Enter the Dragon, organized by Warner Bros. He was officially welcomed in Amsterdam the previous Monday by representatives of the European distributor Concord Films. He spent Monday and Tuesday in executive meetings in Amsterdam. On Wednesday morning, on his own personal initiative, he took a direct train to the Port of Rotterdam, the second largest city in the Netherlands. He wanted to personally experience the largest commercial port in Western Europe, and especially observe how the modern unloading of textile goods arriving from East Asia to continental European markets worked. Instead of passive tourism, Bruce decided to learn through actual hands-on work. He sought out the administrative foreman of the Eastern Industrial Pier and offered his own voluntary, unpaid manual services as a loader for exactly 8 consecutive hours that Wednesday. The administrative foreman, a 58-year-old Dutchman named Frederick Johnson, was surprised by the request for unpaid volunteer work but immediately accepted the free physical labor. Bruce was dressed in a simple blue-gray jacket made of thick cloth lent by the foreman himself, regular dark trousers, and heavy portwork boots issued by the warehouse. He was completely unrecognized by any of the 30 Dutch dock workers present. Bruce worked silently in a professional, methodical rhythm for exactly 3.5 consecutive hours, manually unloading textile bales that had arrived directly from the Stella Maris. The rest of the dock workers were surprised by the impressive technical efficiency of the small, skinny Asian. Bruce single-handedly unloaded heavy textile bales weighing 47 kg each with visible, calm physical ease, in a constant, methodical rhythm, without any visible signs of fatigue. It was at this moment, during his 4th consecutive hour of manual labor, that Henrik Vanderberg arrived from an administrative meeting at the main office and noticed the small, newly hired Chinese worker. Henrik had a long-standing, deep-seated issue with the unofficial hiring of foreign, non-Dutch workers on the dock. He believed that the national commercial ports belonged exclusively to the Dutch workers themselves. Henrik calmly walked the 12 meters over to Bruce. In 4 long, calculated strides, he grabbed Bruce by the thick cloth blue-gray jacket, lifted him completely above the wet concrete, walked an additional 3 meters to the nearest giant industrial container, and forcefully pinned Bruce against the corrugated steel sheet of the dark blue container C2847. The sound of the impact was heard in all the surrounding port warehouses. Henrik held Bruce suspended 40 cm above the wet concrete floor, smiled broadly, and spoke loudly in rough Dutch. The 30 dock workers immediately stopped all manual unloading work. Bruce showed no visible expression of panic. In a calm, quiet voice, audible only to Henrik and the nearest workers, he said in English, "Please put me down, sir. First, second." Henrik began to laugh, even louder. Right at that moment, Bruce moved both arms simultaneously. Bruce's right arm rose from inside Henrik's giant guard and precisely grabbed the 3-time champion's right wrist, exactly at the spot where the ulnar nerve passes over the ulna bone. Second. Bruce applied surgical lateral pressure to Henrik's ulnar nerve, an ancient Chinese chin-na technique traditionally known as Ing Jiao. The 3 middle fingers of Henrik's right hand involuntarily unclasped. The firm grip on the blue-gray jacket began to progressively weaken. Henrik did not understand what was happening to his own body. Second. Bruce's left hand, now completely free from the initial pin, rose in a precise horizontal inward motion and struck the base of Henrik's chin with an open palm, an upward Wing Chun strike traditionally known as Gua Chui. The strike did not look externally powerful, but it landed exactly on the submental point, where the nerves of the upper cervical plexus are concentrated. 4th second. Henrik Vanderberg instantly lost voluntary motor control over his entire neck and both shoulders simultaneously. The 172 kg three-time champion crashed heavily backward onto the wet port concrete without any voluntary muscular strength in either of his supporting legs. Bruce silently stepped down from the dark blue corrugated steel sheet. His heavy borrowed work boots touched the wet concrete. Henrik fell heavily on his back next to industrial container C2747. With both of his arms shaking uncontrollably on the cold asphalt, physically unable to utter a coherent word in Dutch. The 30 Dutch dockworkers froze completely in absolute astonishment. No one moved. No one intervened. Bruce silently straightened the crumpled lapels of the borrowed blue-gray jacket, looked at the 30 motionless dockworkers, bowed slightly in formal Asian polite respect, and said in a calm voice in English, "I'll finish my shift." He silently returned to the batch of yet unloaded heavy textile bales next to the Stella Maris. He calmly picked up the next 47 kg bale and methodically continued the manual unloading for the remaining 4 consecutive hours in a flawless professional rhythm, until he had worked exactly 8 consecutive hours of voluntary, unpaid physical labor, just as previously agreed upon. Henrik Vanderberg only fully regained motor control of his arms and neck 47 minutes after the surgical incident. He was discreetly taken by 2 comrades to the private medical clinic of the Port Union. The next morning, he was officially fired from his position as the unofficial dock foreman by an internal administrative decision. In January 1973, he discreetly moved to Utrecht. He continued to compete in the strongman circuit for another 4 consecutive years, but never won another national title. He retired in 1977 at 41 and opened a small private powerlifting academy in Utrecht. He methodically trained Dutch students for 28 consecutive years and categorically refused to speak publicly about the incident for the rest of his professional life. In 2008, at 72 years old, he gave his only important interview to a Dutch sports journalist. He only said this: "I pinned at least 47 foreign workers against shipping containers over 9 years as an unofficial foreman, thinking that being a 3-time strongman champion was the answer to all my professional problems. In 4 seconds by sheet C2747, I learned that there are little Chinese men who work voluntarily and for free precisely because they have calculated in advance how to bring down 3-time champions of the Netherlands." He died in 2019 at 83 years old. Frederik Janssen, the administrative foreman of the Eastern Pier on that foggy Thursday morning, lived until 1904. Date anachronism translated directly from the original text. In 4 seconds of that foggy European morning, 30 ordinary Dutch dockworkers learned once and for all that the most dangerous man in any commercial port in the world is never the 3-time national champion who pins you against the shipping containers first. It's the skinny little Chinese man who asked to work 8 consecutive hours voluntarily and for free, and who methodically completed his planned shift after dropping the champion onto the wet port concrete without saying a single unnecessary word. M.